Hey everyone, this is Greg with Crossing Jordan Ministries, and I have got a super exciting guest with me today. Actually, two guests. I have Peggy Joyce Ruth, author of the world famous book, Psalm 91, God's Umbrella of Protection. And I also have her assistant with me on the air, and that is Ann Johnson. And so today we're going to be talking about Psalm 91. There are all kinds of things happening. You can see the background I have is the American flag. I am coming at this from a very patriotic, pro-American, God Save America aspect, because I see what's happening in our country. And personally, I think that if we don't stand up as Christians and defend this country and defend our God-given freedoms and rights, there's a good chance we could lose them in a year or so or sooner with what's happening. And this attack is not going to end. And the corona crisis doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon. So anybody that knows about Psalm 91 knows that it talks about supernatural protection, especially from plagues, which corona is a plague. It's a virus. So yes. Anyway, Peggy and Ann, thank you for joining me today and welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's so good to be with you. It's very good.
So Psalm 91, when I think of Psalm 91, I can't think of a name that stands out more next to Moses, who wrote Psalm 91, than Peggy Joyce Ruth, because your book's all over the place. You've been on Christian TV. You've spoken all over the country. You've been in ministry for over 50 years. So I know you got an amazing story on Psalm 91, and that's one of the things I want you to share with our audience to start. Tell us a little bit of background on your history, Peggy. How did you get into Psalm 91? How did this take on so much meaning with you to the point where you started a ministry that 50 years later is still going strong based on Psalm 91?
Well, it was very supernatural. I was looking, when I was in my early 20s, I was looking at all the things that were coming on the earth. And of course, back then it wasn't anything compared to what it is now, but it looked big to me. There was cancer and heart disease, and everywhere I looked, some of my close friends were really being hit hard. And I got so panicked, and I just thought everywhere I look, something horrible is happening. And I worked myself up into such a stew that I ended up in going to a psychiatrist. He even put me through shock treatments, and after I got through all the shock treatments, thinking, okay, now I'm going to be okay. Well, I wasn't. And so I realized the world does not have any answers for me. And so I was a Christian, but I wasn't really walking that closely with the Lord. And so I just said, God, the world has no answers. What do we do? And so he told me that he was the only answer. And at the time, that didn't mean that much to me. But boy, since then, I realized he is the only answer. And so anyway, I had tried everything else. And so one day, I was still so much in fear of everything that was happening on the earth. One day, I just prayed and I said, God, is there any way to be protected from all the evil we see coming on the earth? Or do we just take our chances like everybody else and try to do the best we can? And I lay down and went immediately to sleep and had a spiritual dream. And in the dream, I was outside asking the same question. I was saying, Lord, is there any way to be protected from all the evil we see coming on the earth? Or do we just, grin and bear it and not worry about what comes? And suddenly, God's voice came out of heaven and said, in your day of trouble, call on me and I will answer. You should have seen me. I mean, I started dancing in the dream and jumping and clapping, and I was so happy. And I realized God had given me an answer. And suddenly I looked around and the field started filling up with people. And the more I rejoiced, they were rejoicing and they were clapping. And as far as I could see in every direction, there were people being added. And we were all rejoicing over the fact that God had given us an answer. Well, instantly I woke up and my feet wouldn't even stand still. I mean, I was off that bed jumping and clapping and rejoicing. And I mean, I was all by myself, but they probably heard me in the next block. And so anyway, the next day, someone just mentioned the word Psalm 91. They didn't say what was in it. But when I heard those words, now back then I didn't know my Bible very well. I didn't even know how many Psalms there were. I didn't even know there were 91 Psalms. But when I heard the Psalm 91, something exploded on the inside of me, and I nearly tore my Bible up, turning to see what it had to say. And when I found it, there it was, every answer that I had ever been looking for. I mean, an answer for every fear, every problem. I mean, it was all right there. And I was bouncing up and down, holding my Bible, bouncing up and down. I was so excited. And so the Lord had me get into Psalm 91 and start just researching it, every word. And I knew God had supernaturally given it to me. I knew I didn't find it. And boy, that started me on a walk with God that has never stopped. You know, here it is, 50 years later, and I'm still just, I get so excited every time I get a chance to share about Psalm 91. I can hardly hold myself back, because I've seen so many miracles. And after we put the books out, there are people all over the world, literally, that send me their miracles. They tell me about how they put Psalm 91 to work and how it worked in their life. And anyway, I just can never thank God enough. I get so excited about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great, great story. And I did watch a video before I did this interview here with you, and I saw a Sid Roth interview that you had confessed that, you know, when this started going on, that you had almost some kind of a breakdown, that your husband, they did shock treatments on you and everything. And is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, I had tried everything. I went to a precious psychiatrist. He was just a good man, had a huge, well, it wasn't really a ministry, but he had so many people coming to him for help. And he wanted me to get well, but he didn't have the answers. And he was even a Christian, but he still didn't have the answer. But after that is when God gave me Psalm 91. And then the Lord began to show me that I couldn't just read Psalm 91 and be excited about it, that I had to make it a part of my life every single day. And that's what I've done. For the past 50 years, I probably haven't missed going out and walking and praying Psalm 91 in a prayer of thanksgiving back to the Lord. I probably have done it, maybe I've missed 5 times in 50 years. I do it every day. I make that a top priority, because that has become my life. I just, you know, and I do it out loud in a prayer of thanksgiving, and so that I can keep it alive. You can't just read it or think about it. You've got to say it out loud. There's something about saying it that makes it just kind of explode out of you. And as you do that, without even trying, you develop a love walk. All of a sudden, the Lord just becomes so precious. And you realize that he loves us that much, is why he gave us that precious promise. And so I do that every day. And I always tell people, you know, you can read Psalm 91 and you can receive Psalm 91. But if you just think about it every little while, every day or so, or every week or so, it's not going to do that much good. It's got to become really one of the most important things in our life, knowing that God loved us so much that he gave us answers for every single thing that's coming on the earth against us.
That's a really good way to put it. An answer to everything coming on the earth. And there's a lot of things coming on the earth against us right now. There's never been a greater time in the history of the world to be plugged into Psalm 91 than right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
and there's something about saying it out loud that releases power. God began to show me that I could think it and I could read it, but when I started to say it and believe it in my heart and say it with my mouth, it started making things explode on the inside of me, and it started affecting everything about my life.
That's amazing, because the way the Psalm starts out, it says, I will say of the Lord.
Yes.
So you talk about the power of your words. So it's not something you just take and read in the Bible and then think that it's going to have power. It will, but when you actually speak it out like you're talking about, and I even downloaded this from your website, you actually have a whole prayer, your personal prayer covenant. That's amazing. Anybody can go download that for free about Psalm 91. And I've even been saying it now since I printed this out.
My assistant, bless her heart, she's the one that put that on. And
Really?
I appreciate that so much.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. You must get testimonials on a daily basis, I would have to imagine, because it says you've sold over 6 million copies of the main book, right?
Yes, people call us and they want to share their testimony. It's kind of like me, when I got set free, I wanted to tell people. And so Ann is just, she just gets letters and everything all the time, telling about their miracles and telling how they put Psalm 91 to work and how it worked. I had a friend, she was a friend to all of us in our church, and her name was Renee, and she really loves Psalm 91, put it to work, but that doesn't keep the enemy sometime from trying. He comes knocking at the door. And she found out that she had lupus in the final stages. And so they had her at MD Anderson, and they told her, this was in about October, and they told her she would not see Christmas. And I was talking to her, and she said, I have Psalm 91. I am not going to give up my Psalm 91 covenant. And they even told her daughter, prepare yourself because your mother's not going to live. And when they left the room, she told her daughter, don't you listen to that. We've got a Psalm 91 covenant. And so she was confessing, and she got worse and worse. Her liver started shutting down. Her kidneys were shutting down. They gave her one horrible report after another. And every time I'd call her, she would minister to me. She would say, I've got a Psalm 91 covenant. And she said, the devil's going to have to pull off. And so anyway, of course, the doctor, she wasn't doing all the extreme things the doctors were asking her to do. And she just said, no, and not that she's against doctors. I didn't mean that. She did a lot of things they told her to do, but some of the extreme things. She said, no, I'm just going to trust God. And so anyway, it was months later where she had kept standing, and finally, little by little, it started turning around. Well, that's been like 20 years ago, and she's all over the United States preaching the gospel now.
Wow. Praise the Lord. That's awesome.
So sometimes the enemy comes to try to steal, and that's when we have to stand our ground and say, no, I'm not going there. And the enemy will really try to come in with symptoms. And we've got to realize that those symptoms, we can either receive them or we can say no. And there's times when those symptoms are coming on somebody's body, and just like Renee, they have to say, those symptoms are coming from the enemy. I'm not going to receive them. I have a covenant with the God of the universe. And sometimes we have to do some really tall standing. The reason I use Renee's testimony is because she probably had to stand harder than anyone else I knew. But she was determined. She was not going to give up her covenant. And the ones who stand and hang on to it, it works. It's wonderful. But sometimes it's a battle for a little while.
I'm sure. And I know I discussed a little bit before we did this interview about how I got turned on to Psalm 91. I mean, I've known about Psalm 91 for many, many years, and I've read it and I've spoken it, but I've never really made it a daily thing where it's so important. But the Corona crisis has changed our country so much with so many things happening. It's wow, there's nothing else to cling to except for the Lord right now. And God, if we don't have your help and your protection, we're not going to make it through this. We really need to do everything in our power to stand up. Everything that's happened with Corona, in my opinion, it's almost like a test. God didn't cause the virus to happen. And he's allowed Satan to go this far with it. But I almost think it's like God's letting him go so far, and then he's waiting to see what the church is going to do. I could be wrong on that, but I think, I feel a great. I
think it really is up to us. Yes.
It is. It is.
Yes. And I think God is wanting his children to get it inside of them so much that they're confessing it every day. They're thanking God. And then all of a sudden, we have it inside of us, and now it breaks open where we start then not just praying just over our little family, but we start praying over the leadership in the federal government, then the leadership in the, our state governments, and down clear to our local governments. We need to pray Psalm 91 over each one of them. Pray that they'll know it and it'll come alive to them. And if all of the Christians get it in their hearts and then they start praying it over their country, we'll see unbelievable things start happening.
I believe that. I believe that with all my heart, Peggy Joyce. I believe we're going to see a mighty move of God if we can get enough Christians to do this.
Exactly. We've got to have
Which means this video needs to go viral, and this information needs to get out there as quickly as possible. Listen, I see what's happening with the presidential election, all the chaos and trouble they're talking about that might come just from the election. But I feel like our country is facing a serious crisis, and God's given us advanced weaponry in the form of Psalm 91 to go out and do battle before the crisis hits so that we can win, because he wants us to win. Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospers, as it says in 3rd epistle of John, verse 2. He's not involved in making us sick and making us broke or causing all these problems. That's all the devil. It's not God that's bringing corona on us. It's the devil. I know you've gotten so many testimonials, so I certainly don't want to make this video about a bunch of testimonials, but I know you talked about one in the beginning. Are there one or two that really stick out in addition to the one you talked about with that woman that was kind of battling there in the beginning? Or?
Well, maybe about 4 years ago, Peggy Joyce was invited to a retirement party for a sergeant major on a base, and when she got there, she met the man that she and another person had helped get Psalm 91 books for his whole group of men and women who were going into combat. There were 183 of them. And so when he brought them home and retired, he invited Peggy Joyce and onto his retirement party, and they met there. And this week we've had some correspondence with him, and he basically says, Psalm 91 may be encouraging to some people, but to me and my men and women, it saved our life. That and the Lord, just knowing Psalm 91, he brought all of those Marines home, all 183.
Yes.
Wow. And so that was very encouraging. I spoke with a lady this week in Atlanta, and we're searching for this gentleman's name, but she's told it to someone else, and then she told it to me. She was in the Atlanta airport, and they wouldn't allow her to carry the books around, but she could carry a Psalm 91 postcard or a prayer that she had. And so she would look for military people, and she found a gentleman and said, I need to give you this. And he was very interested in the Psalm 91, but he had 25 men and women with him, and she didn't have enough. That was her last one. And she just said, you need to pray this every day when you get over into, I think it was Afghanistan. Well, she happened to be there when he came home in the airport, and he found her, and he said, I never thought I would see you again. But anyway, it had saved their life over there. They read it every morning as a group, and one day they were entering into a building, decided they better stop and say it again, praying over themselves as they were walking in the building. The building did crumble, and people that were looking on the outside said there can't be anybody alive in there. And all of his entire group came out untouched. And so, for the police officers now, for wives of police officers or husbands, if it's the other way around, they need this. We have a lady here in town who says, her book is in her prayer closet in pieces, where she's hung different parts of it on her wall and prayed over her husband every time he goes out to work. And so it's powerful. It really is.
Absolutely.
Wow. But his word, he's put it up there. In the beginning was the word was with God, the word was God. So yes. Yeah, I love what you're saying. It makes so much sense. And, that God is going to always back up his word. He's going to support his word. And if his word says that, and it's been true for thousands of years, it's still true today in 2020. Nothing's changed. So, true. You know what? If we had 50 million Americans, because I know there's that many Christians left in America, and there's probably a lot more than that. They had 50 million Christians start saying Psalm 91 every day and start taking this thing like a bull by the horns, then this whole crisis would be dealt with quickly.
Yes.
Jesus talks about, if two or more come together and agree on something, that it will be bound in heaven as it is on earth. So, we need to come together, bind things up as believers, speak against what's happening that's not lining up with the word, and then standing firmly on the word and the things that it talks about that protect us. Because God doesn't want us to get taken out in this crisis. He needs us to be his representatives here. This world's gone crazy. I mean, how many people know God in an intimate way? Those numbers seem like they're going down. You look around what's happening all over the world. It's crazy what's going on. Absolutely crazy.
I just feel like what God has shown me is that Christians can't just be lackadaisical and laid back. We're in a time now where we've got to say, this is more important than my job. It's more important than anything I've ever done in the past. Now is my time to grab hold of the Lord Jesus Christ and make him Lord of my life, make him Lord of everything, and know that he loves us so much is why he gave us this protection covenant. And the more we realize that God gave it to us, the more we realize how much he loves us. He doesn't want us to go through the horrible things, and he's given us a way out, but we've got to take that way out. And so I'm finding people more than ever. Some people, when I first started this and did the first book, they didn't even know what Psalm 91, many people didn't know what Psalm 91 was, And I know it's, people in World War II, they, many of them put it to work, but I really didn't find many people who just on the sidewalk knew what Psalm 91 was, but now they do. God's making it bubble up in people's hearts, and he's doing that so that we'll put it to work in our lives and then spread it to other people. I think that's where we are right now, and we don't want to sit back complacently and do nothing. We want to say, no, God called me for this time, and I'm going to be available, and I'm going to be working for the kingdom.
Amen. I feel the same way. That's why I'm making this video with you. I want to get this information out.
Yes.
I love this country. There's no other country for us to run to get safety anymore. There's nowhere else to go. This is it.
Right.
So, if America falls, or if we lose our way and we lose our Christian values as a nation, the game's up, and Satan's going to own the whole world. So.
But it's up to us as Christians. It really is. And God's pulling us and, wanting us to go in that direction, but we have to make that choice.
I appreciate these fine ladies being with me today, and I thank you for the prayers. And I thank you most of all for all your insight and info on Psalm 91. It's been a blessing to me, and I'm sure anybody that's listening to this is going to be blessed by it. So thank you for being on the program with me.
Thank you for inviting us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg. Talk to you later.